The alarms blared through the research station as the contamination warning lit up the central hub in flashes of crimson. Dr. Zexor, the lead xenobiologist on research station Ellipses, frantically tapped commands into the quarantine protocol system while his assistant, Dr. Neary, gathered emergency supplies. Human containment breach in Laboratory 7. All personnel evacuate to safe zones immediately. The computerized voice echoed through the corridors as researchers of various alien species hurried to follow protocol. Brian Harrington had only sneezed. One simple, ordinary sneeze that now had an entire space station of alien scientists running for their lives. "It's just a cold," Brian shouted through the glass of the hastily established quarantine chamber. His voice was slightly nasal, and he wiped his reddened nose with the back of his hand. "I've had it for 3 days. It's not serious." Dr. Zexor's 4 eyes widened in horror at this casual admission. The tall, blue-skinned scientist adjusted his protective suit and approached the communication panel. "Mr. Harrington, your body temperature is 38.2 degrees Celsius. Our scans detect a viral infection coursing through your respiratory system. The contagion particles were released into Laboratory 7 when you..." Zexor made a strange gesture with his upper limbs, mimicking the human sneeze. "When I sneezed," Brian clarified, feeling increasingly ridiculous. "Look, on Earth this happens all the time. It'll be gone in a week." Dr. Neary, whose pink gelatinous form quivered inside her protective suit, checked the readings on her datapad. "The fever alone indicates severe physiological distress, and you claim this is common?" Brian sighed, which triggered another sneeze. The 2 alien scientists flinched backward despite their containment suits. "I need to get back to work," Brian insisted, his voice now scratchy. "The linguistic analysis on the Proxima artifacts won't complete itself." "Work?" Dr. Zexor's voice rose to a pitch Brian hadn't heard before. "You are the first human ever aboard an intergalactic scientific council research vessel. Your physiology is still largely unknown to us. And now you've introduced a potential pandemic." Brian reached for a tissue from his pocket and blew his nose, causing both aliens to back away further. "Station alert elevated to level 4. Emergency council has been notified," announced the computer system. "Level 4? Brian asked, suddenly concerned. "What does that mean?" Dr. Neary's voice trembled. "It means the Intergalactic Council will decide whether to salvage this station or sterilize it completely." Brian's slight headache suddenly felt much worse. The next 12 hours were a blur of medical scans, sample collections, and increasingly uncomfortable questions about human immune responses. Brian sat on the edge of the medical examination table, watching as Dr. Zexor and a newly arrived specialist named Dr. Vrek studied his blood samples from behind 3 layers of protective barriers. "The pathogen is reproducing at an alarming rate," Dr. Vrek noted, his scaled head tilting as he magnified the holographic display. "And yet the human shows only mild systemic response." "I told you," Brian said for what felt like the 100th time. "Humans get colds all the time. Our immune systems handle them." Dr. Zexor turned all 4 eyes toward Brian. "Mr. Harrington, your casual attitude toward this infection is deeply concerning. Our scans show your body is literally at war. White blood cells are engaged in combat with viral invaders, your respiratory passages are inflamed, and your brain has triggered a fever response to attempt to cook the invaders alive." "That's just how our bodies work," Brian explained, feeling both frustrated and slightly amused. "The fever is actually helping me fight off the infection." Dr. Neary approached the quarantine barrier, her gelatinous form rippling with what Brian had come to recognize as anxiety. "In most sentient species we've encountered, a fever of your current level would indicate imminent organ failure." Brian was about to respond when the station's communication system activated. The large screen at the front of the medical bay flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Counselor Grex, the head of the Intergalactic Scientific Council's Safety Division. "Dr. Zexor, what is the status of the human contagion?" The counselor's voice was deep and resonant, each word precisely enunciated. "Counselor, we have the human contained and are studying the pathogen. It appears to be a viral infection that..." "Is it weaponized?" Counselor Grex interrupted. Brian sat up straighter. "Weaponized? It's a common cold." The counselor's golden eyes narrowed. You admit this is a known pathogen among your kind? Yes, and it causes fever, physical discomfort, and is transmitted through bodily fluids and airborne particles. Well, yes, but Dr. Zexor, the counselor continued, ignoring Brian's attempts to explain. The council has reviewed your preliminary reports. This situation is unprecedented. We cannot risk this human disease spreading to other species. The station will remain under quarantine until further notice. Dr. Vrek stepped forward. Counselor, with respect, I believe the human is being truthful. This appears to be a naturally occurring virus that has co-evolved with their species. The human's body is fighting it effectively. Fighting it? The counselor's voice rose. The scans show active viral replication in progress. The battle is ongoing with no clear victory in sight. For all we know, this could be a chronic condition that humans simply endure while spreading contagion throughout the galaxy. Brian couldn't help but laugh, which immediately turned into a coughing fit. This caused all three alien scientists to back away from the barrier and the counselor to emit a sound of alarm. I'm fine, Brian wheezed, recovering from his cough. This will clear up in a few days. Humans have been dealing with these viruses for our entire existence. The counselor was silent for a moment. Dr. Zexor, I am dispatching our leading xenoepidemiologist, Dr. Taxley, to your station. She will arrive within 18 hours. Until then, maintain strict quarantine protocols. After the communication ended, Brian slumped back on the examination table. His head was throbbing, and despite his attempts to downplay his condition, he was feeling genuinely miserable. Is there any chance I could get some medicine? Maybe some tea with honey? That usually helps with a sore throat. The three alien scientists exchanged confused looks. You wish to consume nutrients while infected? Dr. Vrek asked, clearly disturbed by the suggestion. Humans need to maintain strength while fighting infections, Brian explained. Food, fluids, rest, they all help our immune systems do their job. Dr. Neary seemed fascinated by this concept. You provide resources to your body during battle rather than conserving energy in a dormant state? Fascinating adaptation. I'll have appropriate nutrition sent in, Dr. Zexor said after a moment of consideration. And we'll need to research this tea with honey to see if we can synthesize something similar. Brian sneezed again, and all three scientists jumped back. For the record, Brian said, wiping his nose, I'm really sorry about all this. I had no idea a common cold would cause such alarm. Dr. Zexor's upper limbs made a gesture that Brian had learned indicated scientific curiosity. Every crisis is an opportunity for discovery, Mr. Harrington. We will learn much from this encounter. Brian wasn't sure if that was meant to be comforting, but at this point, he'd take what he could get. The next morning, or what passed for morning, on the space station's artificial cycle, Brian woke feeling slightly better. His fever had dropped to 37.9 degrees, which the medical system still flagged as dangerously elevated, but his headache had subsided somewhat. He was surprised to find a new face outside his quarantine chamber. A tall, slender alien with iridescent scales and 6 limbs was studying his medical readouts with intense concentration. You must be Dr. Taxley, Brian said, sitting up in his bed. The alien turned, revealing a face with large, compound eyes that reminded Brian of a dragonfly. And you are the human host. Fascinating. Your vital signs have improved slightly since the last reading. I told everyone I'd get better on my own, Brian said, unable to keep a hint of smugness from his voice. The infection is still active, Dr. Taxley noted, tapping on her data pad. Yet your system is adapting. Most remarkable. In my 600 years of studying cross-species diseases, I've never seen anything quite like the human immune response. Brian blinked in surprise. 600 years? How old are you? 842 of your Earth years, Dr. Taxley replied matter-of-factly. Relatively young for my species. Now, I need to understand more about these colds, as you call them. How frequently do humans contract them? Brian thought for a moment. It varies. Some people might get 2 or 3 per year. Children usually get more since their immune systems are still developing. Dr. Taxley's compound eyes seemed to widen. You're exposed to this multiple times annually for your entire lives? Pretty much, Brian confirmed. There are hundreds of different cold viruses, and we develop immunity to specific strains after exposure, but new ones are always circulating. The xenoepidemiologist made a series of rapid notes on her data pad. And during these infections, you continue normal activities. Despite fever, inflammation, and viral shedding, well, ideally we'd rest, but yeah, most people just take some medicine to manage the symptoms and go about their day. Dr. Taxley set down her data pad and leaned closer to the quarantine barrier. Mr. Harrington, I don't think you understand how extraordinary this is from our perspective. Most spacefaring species have eliminated such infections from their populations centuries or millennia ago. The idea of living with recurring viral invasions is disturbing. Dr. Zexor entered the medical bay, followed by Dr. Neary and Dr. Vreck. Ah, Dr. Taxley, I see you've begun your assessment. Indeed, the epidemiologist replied, and I'm beginning to understand why the Council is so concerned. Humans appear to be walking reservoirs of viral material, constantly shedding and exchanging pathogens. Brian frowned. That makes us sound like plague carriers. We're not dangerous to other species. That remains to be determined, Dr. Taxley said coolly. The Council has authorized me to conduct a series of exposure tests using synthetic tissue analogs for various Council species. Over the next several hours, Brian watched as Dr. Taxley and the station scientists carefully tested samples of his respiratory secretions against synthetic tissues designed to mimic the biology of various alien species. The process was fascinating, despite his discomfort and growing boredom with confinement. Finally, Dr. Taxley gathered the research team for a discussion just outside Brian's quarantine chamber. The results are conclusive, she announced. The human rhinovirus shows no ability to infect or replicate in any of the tested tissue analogs. The genetic and cellular differences are simply too great. Brian felt a wave of relief. So, I'm not a threat to anyone here? Dr. Taxley turned to face him. Correct. Your cold virus is specifically adapted to human physiology. It poses no direct danger to non-human life forms. Great! Brian exclaimed before being interrupted by another sneeze. So, I can get back to work now? The four alien scientists exchanged glances that Brian couldn't quite interpret. There's a complication, Dr. Zexor said carefully. While your virus poses no infection risk to us, your physiological response to it remains deeply concerning. Brian wiped his nose. What do you mean? Dr. Neary stepped forward, her gelatinous form pulsing with what Brian had come to recognize as excitement. Your immune system, Mr. Harrington. It's extraordinarily aggressive. The inflammatory response, the elevated temperature, the production of antimicrobial compounds, it's unlike anything we've documented in sentient species. The Council is concerned, Dr. Taxley added, that this aggressive immune response might extend to other aspects of human behavior and biology. If your species treats minor infections with such a powerful physical response, how might you react to more significant threats? Brian stared at them, bewildered. So, I'm still in quarantine because my immune system works too well? Not just that, Dr. Vreck said. We're also fascinated by your casual attitude toward what our medical systems register as a serious health crisis. You call a systemic inflammatory response with that fever just a cold, and expect to continue working. This suggests humans may have pain thresholds and endurance levels far beyond Council standards. Brian wasn't sure whether to laugh or be offended. So now I'm dangerous because I can function with a runny nose? Dr. Taxley's compound eyes fixed on him. The Council has existed for 12,000 years, Mr. Harrington. In that time, we've encountered species with remarkable abilities, great strength, intelligence, or sensory perception. But we've rarely encountered a species that casually endures what others would consider significant physical distress. The implications for human integration into galactic society are complex, Dr. Zexor added. If what you consider minor ailments would register as life-threatening emergencies in our medical systems, how do we establish appropriate protocols? Brian hadn't considered this perspective. He'd been so focused on convincing them that he wasn't dying that he hadn't thought about the broader implications. I guess I never thought about it that way, he admitted. So what happens now? I will report to the Council that the immediate contagion risk is minimal, Dr. Taxley said. but I will recommend an expanded research program into human physiology and medical standards before further integration efforts. Dr. Zexor nodded in agreement. In the meantime, Mr. Harrington, we would like to continue monitoring your recovery. It would provide valuable data. Brian sighed, which turned into a slight cough. Do I have a choice? Of course, Dr. Neary said, sounding surprised. We would never compel research participation. That would violate council ethics. Brian considered his options. He was feeling better already, and if his mundane cold could actually contribute to interspecies understanding, maybe it was worth the inconvenience. All right, he agreed. I'll stay in observation, but I want to be able to work remotely on my linguistics project. That can be arranged, Dr. Zexor said, clearly pleased. And perhaps we could discuss appropriate human medical care. If your species requires nutrition and hydration during illness, we should ensure you receive it. By the next day, Brian's condition had improved significantly. His fever was gone, though he still had some congestion and occasional coughing. The research team had been monitoring him constantly, recording every change in his symptoms and vital signs with fascination. Dr. Taxley had prepared her report for the council, which concluded that while human viruses posed minimal cross-species infection risk, the human physiological response to illness warranted further study before broader integration into council facilities. Brian was finally allowed out of the strict quarantine chamber, though he was confined to a special section of the research station designated for human habitation. Dr. Neary had taken a particular interest in human medical care and had successfully synthesized something approximating chicken soup, which Brian found both touching and amusing. The liquid nutrition contains proteins, electrolytes, and compounds that might support immune function, Dr. Neary explained as she presented him with the steaming bowl. Is this appropriate for your condition? Brian took a sip and nodded appreciatively. It's actually pretty close to what we'd make on Earth. Thank you. Dr. Neary's gelatinous form quivered with what Brian now recognized as pleasure. I've been studying human medical texts. They are surprisingly focused on symptom management rather than prevention or complete elimination of disease vectors. We've eliminated a lot of serious diseases through vaccination, Brian explained, but some, like the common cold, have so many variants that it's been difficult to develop comprehensive prevention. Dr. Zexor joined them, accompanied by a new alien Brian hadn't met before, a small insectoid being with delicate wings and multifaceted eyes. Mr. Harrington, this is Counselor Plex, who has been assigned to evaluate your case personally, Dr. Zexor introduced. The counselor's wings vibrated slightly. Fascinating to meet you, Mr. Harrington. Your little biological crisis has caused quite a stir in council chambers. Brian set down his soup. I'm sorry for the trouble. If I'd known a cold would cause such concern, I would have postponed my assignment until I was completely well. That's precisely what interests us, the counselor replied. The casual acceptance of illness among humans. Most council species have engineered such vulnerabilities out of their populations generations ago. We've made progress against major diseases, Brian explained, but the common cold and similar minor infections haven't been priorities because they're rarely dangerous. Rarely dangerous, the counselor repeated. Yet you experienced elevated temperature, inflammation, pain, discharge of bodily fluids, and impaired cognitive function. By any council medical standard, those symptoms would indicate serious illness requiring immediate treatment. Brian smiled slightly. I guess humans are just used to being a little sick sometimes. Our bodies are pretty good at fighting off most common infections. Indeed, Counselor Plex said, wings fluttering in what might have been agitation. Dr. Taxley's report suggests that humans might be classified as a high-endurance species with exceptional immune response capabilities. This has implications for your integration into council facilities. What kind of implications? Brian asked cautiously. Dr. Zexor stepped forward. For one, our medical alert systems would need recalibration for human occupants. What our systems consider life-threatening may be merely uncomfortable for you. Additionally, the counselor continued, there are concerns about human perception of other species' medical needs. If you consider a systemic inflammatory response minor, would you recognize when non-human colleagues face genuine medical emergencies? Brian hadn't considered this perspective. I suppose we'd need training on the different species' medical norms. Precisely, Counselor Plex agreed. The Council has authorized an expanded human integration program, including comprehensive medical and biological education for both humans and non-humans working together. Over the next several days, as Brian fully recovered from his cold, he found himself at the center of an intensive research program. Dr. Neri had been officially assigned to develop human-appropriate medical protocols for Council facilities, while Dr. Vrek studied the specifics of human immune response. Brian's linguistics work on the Proxima artifacts continued, but with frequent interruptions for medical scans, interviews about human health practices, and demonstrations of various human medical treatments. So, this chicken soup has no medicinal properties, yet humans consistently report it helps them recover from respiratory infections? Dr. Neri asked during one such session. It's warm, nutritious, and easy to digest, Brian explained. Plus, there's probably a psychological comfort component. Our grandmothers made it for us when we were sick as children. Dr. Neri made detailed notes. Fascinating. The intersection of nutrition, hydration, and psychological comfort in human healing practices deserves further study. A week after his initial sneeze had thrown the station into chaos, Brian was officially declared healthy by both human and Council medical standards. Counselor Plex called a formal meeting in the station's conference chamber to discuss the findings and implications. The Council has reviewed all data regarding the human cold incident, the counselor announced to the assembled research team. We have reached several conclusions. Brian sat up straighter, suddenly nervous about what these conclusions might mean for future human participation in Council projects. First, Counselor Plex continued, human rhinovirus and similar pathogens pose negligible infection risk to non-human species due to significant biological differences. Quarantine protocols for minor human illnesses can be adjusted accordingly. Dr. Taxley nodded in agreement. We've verified this across synthetic analogs for all major Council species. Second, the counselor said, human physiological responses to illness represent an adaptation pattern we have not previously encountered in spacefaring species. This will require specialized medical protocols and training for integrated facilities. Dr. Neri's gelatinous form pulsed with excitement. I've already begun developing a human medical response guide for Council medical systems. Finally, Counselor Plex concluded, this incident has highlighted the need for better cross-species understanding of biological norms. What one species considers a minor inconvenience may represent a critical emergency for another. Brian raised his hand hesitantly. Counselor, does this mean humans will still be welcome in Council research programs? The counselor's wings fluttered briefly. Not only welcome, Mr. Harrington, but now of even greater interest. Your species' unusual biological resilience and adaptation strategies could provide valuable insights for Council science. Dr. Zexor turned all four eyes toward Brian. In fact, the Council has approved an expanded human participation initiative. We are particularly interested in studying how humans have maintained such robust immune systems while developing advanced technology. Brian wasn't entirely sure if being studied like a fascinating specimen was better than being feared as a contagion risk. But it seemed like progress. So my cold actually helped human-alien relations? Brian asked, still somewhat bewildered by the turn of events. Indeed, Counselor Plex confirmed. Though perhaps in the future, we might appreciate advance notice before you begin shedding viral particles in shared laboratory spaces. This drew a ripple of what Brian recognized as laughter from the assembled alien scientists. Dr. Neri approached Brian after the meeting concluded. I've been authorized to establish a comprehensive human health monitoring and support system for the station. Would you assist me in calibrating it properly? Brian smiled. Of course, though I hope we won't need to test the common cold protocols again anytime soon. Actually, Dr. Neri's form rippled with what Brian now recognized as scientific enthusiasm. The Council is quite interested in documenting the full range of minor human ailments and your responses to them. Let's not get carried away, Brian cautioned. I'm not eager to catch the flu just for science. Flu? Dr. Neri's form quivered with interest. Is this another common human infection? How does it differ from a cold? Brian sighed, realizing he might have opened another Pandora's box of alien medical curiosity. It's similar, but more severe. Higher fever, muscle aches, more serious symptoms overall. Dr. Neary was already making notes on her data pad. And humans also consider this a minor illness, something you just deal with? Well, it's more serious than a cold, but most healthy adults recover without major medical intervention, Brian explained, already regretting mentioning it. Dr. Taxley, who had overheard, joined the conversation. Most council species would consider any infection causing systemic inflammation and fever a major medical event requiring immediate intervention. Brian shrugged. Humans have been dealing with viruses for our entire existence. Our bodies are adapted to handle them, for the most part. Remarkable, Dr. Taxley said, her compound eyes fixed on Brian with renewed interest. The Council will definitely want to establish long-term studies of human immune response. Your species' ability to function while battling active infections could have significant implications for space exploration and colonization. 2 weeks after what the station crew had begun calling the cold incident, life had largely returned to normal. Brian was back to his regular work schedule, analyzing linguistic patterns in the Proxima artifacts. The only differences were the frequent medical scans he still underwent and the newly established human health monitoring protocol that all station personnel had been trained to understand. Dr. Zexor called Brian to his office for what he described as an important update. When Brian arrived, he found not only Dr. Zexor but also Counselor Plex and a holographic projection of what appeared to be a senior council member Brian hadn't met before. "Mr. Harrington," Dr. Zexor greeted him, "thank you for coming. The Council has reached some important decisions regarding human integration into Council research facilities." Brian took the offered seat, noticing it had been adjusted for human physiology. "I hope they're positive decisions." "Indeed," the holographic council member spoke, her voice resonant and authoritative. "I am High Counselor Vez of the Intergalactic Scientific Council. Your cold incident has led to a fundamental reassessment of our cross-species integration protocols." Brian tried not to look too nervous. "I'm glad something good came of it." "More than you might imagine," High Counselor Vez continued. "For 12,000 years, the Council has approached species integration with a focus on technological compatibility and knowledge sharing. Your case has highlighted the critical importance of biological and medical understanding." Dr. Zexor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "The Council has approved funding for a dedicated human biological integration research center to be established at this station." "Wait," Brian said, surprised. "Because of my cold?" Counselor Plex's wings fluttered. "Your minor illness revealed major gaps in our cross-species medical protocols. What if a council scientist had experienced what they considered a minor ailment while working with humans? The potential for misunderstanding and inappropriate medical response works both ways." The High Counselor's hologram nodded. "This incident has reminded us that true cooperation between species requires deep understanding of our different biological realities. What one species considers normal may be extraordinary to another." Brian was still processing this when Dr. Zexor added, "We would like you to serve as the human liaison for this new research initiative, Mr. Harrington. Your background in linguistics and communication makes you ideally suited to help bridge these biological and cultural gaps." "Me?" Brian was genuinely surprised. "I'm a linguist, not a medical specialist." "Precisely why you're suitable," Counselor Plex explained. "This initiative isn't about medicine alone, but about communication and understanding across biological differences. Your experience as the first human to cause a station-wide medical alert by having a cold provides unique insight." Brian couldn't help but laugh. "When you put it that way, how can I refuse?" The High Counselor's hologram seemed to brighten. "Excellent. We've already begun recruiting additional human specialists to join the program, with an emphasis on human medical professionals who can help develop appropriate cross-species health protocols." As the meeting concluded and plans were made for the new research initiative, Brian found himself reflecting on how a simple sneeze had cascaded into a diplomatic breakthrough. What had started as a misunderstanding about human biology had evolved into an opportunity for deeper interspecies cooperation. Dr. Neary found Brian later in the station's observation lounge, where he was watching the stars through the vast viewing window. "You seem contemplative," she observed, her gelatinous form settling into a chair adapted for her species. "I'm just thinking about how strange it is that my runny nose led to all this," Brian replied. "On Earth, nobody pays attention when someone has a cold. Here, it launched a major scientific initiative." Dr. Neary's form rippled in what Brian now recognized as thoughtful consideration. "Perhaps that's precisely why this research is necessary. What seems unremarkable to you may be extraordinary to us, and vice versa. True understanding requires recognizing these differences." Brian nodded. "I guess I've been taking my immune system for granted my whole life." "And we've been taking our engineered immunity for granted," Dr. Neary replied. "Your cold reminded us that different evolutionary paths lead to different biological realities. The Council has focused so long on technological compatibility that we sometimes overlook the fundamental biological differences between species." "So my cold was actually useful," Brian mused. "More than useful," Dr. Neary assured him. "It may have prevented future misunderstandings that could have had far more serious consequences. Imagine if the first human-alien medical crisis had occurred during a critical diplomatic mission or emergency situation." As Brian gazed out at the stars, he couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. His mother had always told him to cover his mouth when he sneezed, but she'd never mentioned it might someday impact intergalactic relations. "Dr. Neary," he said after a moment, "do you think we'll ever truly understand each other? Humans and council species, I mean. Our biology is so different." Dr. Neary's form shifted into what Brian had come to recognize as her version of a shrug. Understanding doesn't require sameness, only recognition and respect for differences. "Your cold taught us that lesson quite effectively." Brian laughed. "Well, if one cold can do all this, imagine what will happen when I tell you about allergies." Dr. Neary's form vibrated with alarm. "Allergies? Is this another common human condition?" Brian realized he might have just inadvertently launched the next major council research initiative. That's probably a conversation for another day. But yes, it's something many humans live with. As Dr. Neary began eagerly questioning him about this new human biological phenomenon, Brian resigned himself to his unexpected role as ambassador for human medical oddities. It wasn't the diplomatic breakthrough he'd imagined when joining the council research program, but perhaps it was exactly the kind of fundamental understanding that different species needed to truly work together. And all because of a cold that wasn't actually lethal, at least not to humans. Human scientists warned the fever was lethal, the human called it. A cold, this misunderstanding had opened a door to deeper cooperation and understanding between species. As Brian explained the basics of human seasonal allergies to an increasingly fascinated Dr. Neary, he wondered what other mundane human experiences might seem extraordinary through alien eyes. In the vast complexity of intergalactic relations, sometimes it was the smallest things, like a simple sneeze, that built the bridges of understanding between worlds.